No, I've got a
All right,
phantom burp.
there you go.
It's not coming.
The
All
fan.
right. Our
Metal
game
Gear
of
Solid 6, the Phantom Burp. Go ahead.
Our game of the week is Ao Oni. Ao Oni is a horror game made in RPG Maker, originally released in 2008 by dev No Props, and then updated yearly until the final and most popular version released in 2011. The game is about four middle schoolers that get trapped in a mansion with a mysterious blue demon, or Ao Oni, and must escape as they are picked off one by one. The game features puzzle solving and chase sequences with increasingly inventive jump scares. Released as freeware, the game gained popularity in the mid 2010s as YouTubers like PewDiePie and Markiplier played them. The game has gone on to have numerous adaptations in light novels, multiple animes, and even a live action movie series. With that all said, Brogan, what did you think of Awoni?
They call him blue in the game. He's clearly purple.
It's like a violet, like roses are red, Awoni is blue.
So are you. This game was okay. I mean, number one, for a free game in its era and for the time span, I think this is good. Definitely worth playing and is pleasant. Do I think it is always effective? No, but it doesn't wear out its welcome either.
No, and I think that's like super key to it that this game can be beaten in like maybe an hour if you know what you're doing, probably way less. I beat it in
Yeah.
2 hours. Um, what's interesting to me is of like the games we highlighted in the variety minute, this is like the least high concept of any of those RPG horror maker games. This
It's
is
also one of the least visually intensive. Like the monster
no.
himself is like a just like a photoshopped manipulated face.
Yeah, and it has just this plinky like string music as like the chase music, but it's also like very there's something like evocative's not the right word, but memorable. Like I think about like to me that's like an icon of horror to me weirdly because
I
it's
I
so distinct and it's so like grotesque in how it's like photoshopped.
I think when you were you're right, you were not wrong when you were citing Super Nintendo RPGs as a primary influence on RPG Maker titles and even RPG Maker horror titles. But you know what vibe I actually get from this game? I get Newgrounds Flash and like Jeff the Killer vibes,
Yeah,
right? So,
this straight up feels like a creepy pasta. Like I got this weird
yes.
floppy disk titled Awoni, and I played it, and then the Awoni crawled out of my computer. Like,
Yes, it's much more focused on a very specific era of the internet and how horror functioned then. And I
mm-hmm.
think that's really effective in that sense. I think it's super important in that sense.
Yeah, and like going back to what I said about like the cobbling of assets and how that can actually generate a very unnerving atmosphere. Like when you're playing this game and you're exploring this mansion, the door sound effects are so loud and compressed. And then there's like also this weird like ambient breathing sound that's like the soundtrack
Yes.
until the Oni appears and then it's that discordant string music.
Yeah, and it's always like very interesting when you hear like even the sound design. For instance, okay, let me now describe something. So let's say you're walking around and the Oni jumps out at you. Your strategy is typically to go to a closet and go inside the closet and close the doors before he gets in the room, or else he'll know you're in the closet, and just wait. And you have to wait for the door to open once, have him breathe a little bit with the music playing or whatever, and have him close the door. And then you can get out, and everything is silent then, and you sort of breathed it easy. But also, you can't go to the same closet twice in a row or
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Yeah, and that's like, that's a very basic like mechanic like oh the monster has seen you go and hide but it's still like effective because of how it presents like when you close the doors in the closet your screen goes completely black all you have is that
Yep.
sound design um
Yep, and it's also the time where you actually like. I think in the overworld, the Oni is not scary. At least the initial Oni is not scary.
yeah
Where he's just like this stick figure, goofy guy, but in that specific moment where he is staring at you, like looking you in the face, and if he's looking you in the face, you've already lost unless you're behind the jail cell bars. That is where it legitimately pays off the face.
Yeah, because there's something just like the grotesqueness of it is like, oh, I don't like looking at that. Stop showing me that. Like,
Yeah.
and you're right. It definitely has like that creepypasta, like Jeff the Killer vibe to it.
And I also think it's helpful that like the game changes pace at a certain point. Like I like
Hmm.
the idea of the different characters become Onis, and then by the end of it, there's like an entirely different kind of Oni, the Block Oni. He only appears like once, but he is legitimately scary because his game plan changes.
I
He's fast.
I love the Block Oni because of how he reveals himself. He slides into the room like Kramer.
Yeah.
There's even like there's a beat, there's a pause after he's revealed before gameplay resumes, where you're just allowing the player to understand what they're looking at. This weird cube with 2 feet and teeth.
I think there's a humor to this game that's really important.
I
And multiple ways that we can cover later, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely, because there's that intersection of comedy and horror that's like
Yeah.
prevalent in a lot of like horror franchises, not just games. Like how the Oni will pop out in certain areas, like he'll jump out of a closet or he'll burst through the floorboards, but not all at once. He'll poke his head out through the floorboards, see you're there, and then pull himself out. And then
Yep.
the chase resumes. Like those are all good. My favorite jump scare is like the final one where your friend turns into one in your menu.
Yes, that's classy.
That's a great scare, and I like the like. There's just so many good little moments. It's like the game as a whole, but like as a series of like connected like horror moments, I think it works very well. It reminds me a lot of like last year I read a lot of Junji Ito mangas.
Yeah.
And Junji
Yeah.
Ito is this guy who has like a lot of really good horror ideas, but they don't amount to much more than, hey, wouldn't it be fucked up if, you know,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be fucked up if there were these balloons that had people's faces on them and they had nooses for strings and they were trying to kill the people whose face they had? It's like, yeah, that would be fucked up. What am I supposed to do with this information? Um,
Yeah.
and there's just like something to that because it's like there's no lore here, right? Like maybe you could make like an assumption, but not really.
It's so bizarre. I think it's like, yeah, I don't even engage on this in a lore level, but there is like a jail cell with like a bunch of Onis, and then when the Oni kills your friends, because you have multiple friends in this game, they become Onis. They visibly become Onis with their wigs.
Yeah, the wigs are so funny. Um,
Yeah.
that's a feature that's like distinct to this version because I played the previous versions, and that's something we didn't really touch on in the variety minute. Is like one of the appeals from an archival standpoint for RPG horror maker games is they often have multiple versions as they're updated and changed, and like versions can be wildly different. The
Yeah.
three main versions of this game are like structurally similar, but like the story actually starts out somewhat complicated, and then each version it gets reduced and reduced down to this. Like the story in the first one is like you and your friend are walking home from school, and then like four bullies catch you, and all of you and like force you to go inside this mansion, and then you all become trapped there, and you take turns playing as your friend and the main character Hiroshi.
Oh, see, and I think it's so effective to just stick with Hiroshi and just
Yeah.
have your friends be cliches, where it's like, I'm the scaredy cat, I'm, this or that.
Mhm.
I think it works.
I'm the girl.
Yeah.
Uh, in the version that was released just before this, you could actually save all your friends, like they would join your party, and you could get a good ending by escaping with them.
Why do you think they changed that?
I think it's genuinely just they probably had the idea of, hey, wouldn't it be a little scary and goofy if I almost said scroofy there. If like the Oni turn if your friends turned into Oni, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels lonelier. It feels scarier in that sense. I think it works off and pays off better.
I think
Yeah.
and that one's also like much more complicated with the puzzles. Like that one I actually had to look up a walkthrough because some of the puzzles got really like Silent Hill level of you need to know like the verses of Shakespeare to solve this puzzles.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and the version before that got like the story got like a little weirder towards the end where at one point your character's like I need to sleep and you go upstairs to the bedroom and just lie down in one of the beds and you have a dream sequence where the Oni comes in and it's like Hiroshi, it's me, and it takes off its like head and it's like a costume your little sister is in. Then all your friends come in with a birthday cake and sing you happy birthday. And then you wake
That
up and go to because there's a thudding sound and you go to the room one over and there's that one swole Oni is just bashing your friend's head in.
Oh wow. What was your favorite area?
um, I like the annex area, the area you find the block man in.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I kind of like the initial house, but particularly the second half. Not so much the first half. I think the first half is a lot of item collecting. You're
Mm-hmm.
collecting the plate. You're collecting the little like the keys to open the house. But
Yeah,
once you get to that second bit where you have to go into the basement, or like you have to start going into the basement, and you're really not sure when the Oni is going to jump out, scripted,
yeah,
and also it is probably the time where there is like a major tension in escaping the Oni. Because I don't know about you, but once I got past that part and once I was able to get into the basement, the Onis until the block was super easy to dodge or
yeah.
like super easy to avoid. And then like once you go back like two screens or whatever, they go away and then I'm like I don't even have to hide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a feeling of like familiarity lessens the horror. And I think
Yeah.
that's why the dev resorted to having the Oni like jump scare you in increasingly random ways. Um,
Yeah. Well, it also helps that the house itself is very tight corridors to where you can't juke. Juking is not super possible,
that
but it's
was
more.
I
Go
can
ahead.
definitely say in the older versions those hallways were wide, like
Uh,
wide. Um, Probably to make those chase sequences easier because in those older versions, the Oni didn't always have a timer on when it would stop chasing you. You had to hide.
gotcha. I see. I think that would be better though, because I think the timer is sort of I don't know a nothing thing. The only time I was ever like scared in the second half was like there was one time I went to the block oni. It was like I was like finally trying to figure out how to beat the block oni because the block oni like killed me like twice. I was like, all right, I'm gonna run outside. I'm just gonna keep running outside, and I'm running back. Then my friend attacked me. Like the second oni
Oh
came out,
yeah.
and when there's two onis, you're like, oh shit.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. Um what do you think of the puzzles? Or are they just so RPG Maker horror level that they're not even of note?
I think the item ones regarding like the dolls are fine. I think it's
Mm.
all very standard, like break this statue to get the thing, and then do this and that.
Oh, so you
That's all
figured
shit.
out how
Like,
to break the statue, eh? I had to look that up. I had completely forgotten the solution. And if I hadn't remembered getting mad at where you put the light bulb from an older playthrough, I would have never figured out that's where you put the light bulb.
yeah. Honestly, the thing I had to look up was, and this is gonna sound so dumb because it seems obvious in retrospect, was the fake door has the doorknob,
Ah,
and
I
I was like, where the fuck do I get a doorknob?
I love the fake door. I love that gag. You go, you're in a room and there's a door up there, and because it's an RPG game, you have this top-down perspective. So you're like, oh, I'll go up to the door, and then it just opens and there's a wall.
Luigi's Mansion has that. It's so funny.
Yeah, and I think
Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
like I wouldn't want this as anything but what it is. like if they were to like do this as like a third person over the shoulder Resident Evil 4 style horror game, it just wouldn't work because it needs that top down perspective. It needs the Oni looking so goofy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is clearly like one of those things where it's like it's a product for its time, but it should not be out of like you should not try to modernize it. Like this is meant to be a time capsule type game.
And yeah, it's just so fascinating because it's such a time capsule of a different time in horror. Like before FNAF even came out, you know, before everything was trying to be, I think it was everything was trying to be Slender the Eight Pages. Then everything was trying to be Corpse Party, and then everything was trying to be FNAF, and we're still kind of in
What
that
about
period.
everything was trying to be SCP?
I feel like SCP is like in conjunction with the Slender.
Oh, that's possible. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. But
But either way, it's like this was before that, right? This was its own era of flavor, and I think even like the models of the normal characters are just like so. It's close to generic, and like the actual environments look a little cartoony, but in a good way. Like it reminds me of a Flash game. It reminds me of playing like a fucking Newgrounds game, and I think
yeah. And if this game had like come out today, there would be like, oh, get your Oni plush, and let's dissect the Oni lore, you know.
Well, like as a franchise, how did this expand as a franchise?
It is so buck wild. So like I don't know, because we mentioned like every now and again something will come out of Japan and it's like, oh, that's based on an RPG horror game, and it's like, what? And so, just like glancing over the Aoni like fan wiki, this game, 4 light novels, 6 junior novels, with names like Aoni Zombie Amusement Park, Aoni on Skull Island.
The fuck?
Yeah, an anime and a series of anime shorts, like comedy shorts, which are actually very amusing because they play on the mechanics of the game. And then 2 live action films. The second one they hyped up by having the Block Oni in. And
that is hype though.
And the perspective, from what I can gather, all those adaptations take a perspective of like a meta thing where it's like it is that creepypasta thing of, oh, it's a game within the universe, but now the game is real. We're either trapped in the game or the game is influencing reality and the Oni is breaking through, and that sort of thing.
Does the humor pop up in that?
That I can't say. I didn't read the light novels.
Or is this like some Ouija truth or dare shit where it's like the game is real? If you die in the game, you die in real life.
From what other than those like anime comedy shorts I mentioned, I think the live action movies play it straight as far as I can tell. Like I've only watched the trailer and like a brief video synopsis. It's kind of hard to get stateside, you know. And then the light novels, they seem very bogged down in the lore, but their own lore that like Aoni the game is like a MacGuffin in, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Like it's this eldritch object, and the guy who made it is setting up like IRL Aoni mansions to channel demon energy into the game or what have you. I don't. Yeah.
You know what's so interesting is I feel like an intruder to this house. Technically, I am.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, I feel like I don't necessarily want to say the Oni is sympathetic, but I think the Oni is meant to have an aspect to him that is just like animal in a corner or animal threatened in its home. You know what I mean?
There's definitely, I was thinking about this before we recorded. It's like you could replace the Oni with like a dude with a bag over his head and a chainsaw, and it would still like everything would scan the same, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's like Don't Breathe.
Yes.
You
exactly. No, it is like Don't Breathe though, where it's like technically I'm the offender in this, but obviously what the villain is doing is horrifying. So like, oh, I got to get out now.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I also wanted to say I played the South Park version
I did
of
too.
this game.
Yeah.
That is so silly.
So
What
for
happened
this
with
version of the game, if you give, because you can rename your main character, if you give them specific names, they kind of work as cheat codes. So there's like, if you put in like God mode, then the Oni can't kill you unless it's like a scripted sequence. So you just walk around the house with the Oni following you. It's kind of it's a bit funny. But if you put in South Park, then all the character sprites are changed to like South Park models, and the Oni itself is changed to a South Park like design, and it's like a complete parody of the game. It, I don't
It's not like the full experience.
no.
But it's like a goofy little side thing.
It's a fun little thing to put in, and it's like, yeah, I don't think it necessarily needed to be South Park. I think it's like, I don't see any specific South Park references other than, oh my god, he killed Takuro, you bastard.
No, but I think it also like, I think it evokes something. I think it evokes that like simplistic element to it, like seeing the alternate Oni, which is just like this fucking
purple dude with
like,
a smiley face.
yeah, I think it works because it's like that is what this game is doing on its own, but it's just like slightly.
Now it's moved the comedy slider fully
Yes.
over. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it feels like so consistent still.
Like my favorite gag in that is, "You son of a bitch, get that text box off me. He's hiding behind it." Like, that's just a good gag. Like, yeah. And like, like we were saying, that's fun, and that's something I feel like you would only see in an indie game like this. Because
Yeah,
it's not
like it requires the lightness to be able to not only just break the fourth wall, even though sometimes it could be like trite. Like I think here it's so playful and innocent in what it's doing,
Yeah. And I think that's just like, I don't know, it was fun. I know our listeners may have gotten like a curveball with this as a pick. I would like to do an episode on Ib further down the line.
we could do an RPGM episode every season or something. I think that's a good idea.
Because I do think that one holds up, and I do want to get that remake. But this was a good time.
I think so too. It's like a little break, a little vacation in our vacation season.
Yeah. Brogan, that thing in the corner with the trunk, it's pointing a gun at me. It's writing down something. It says
it's about that time.
It's about what the next game should be. It definitely should be. The next game should be.
Let me see the envelope. Let me open it.
Okay.
Now, disclaimer: if we don't play this game, it is what it is. It's No More Heroes, the most pushed DD Cast game of all time.
Yes, we are doing No More Heroes. So help us God.
Zelda and Street Fighter really fucked it. It fucked it hard.
Well, yeah, because every time I was booting up No More Heroes, I was like, I could be climbing the ranks as Lily right about now.
I could be playing a good game. I like No More Heroes, but I could be playing like a good game right now, or an exciting game.
Yeah.
It is what it is. We will talk about it when we do. We'll play as Travis Touchdown. We'll jack off some lightsabers, if you know what I mean. And see you next time.
Goodbye. All right. Yeah.